We are back for another rookie mock draft, but today's going to be a little bit different. If you haven't experienced one yet, this is going to be a war room style mock draft. Instead of us drafters on video sitting in the same room together discussing the picks one by one, we'll actually be drafting alone in our very own war room and discussing the picks and our strategies as they happen. The goal here was to simulate the similar feeling of an actual NFL draft war room. So I do hope you enjoy this video. Please leave a like if you did. Comment down below your thoughts on it. What picks surprise you? What strategies are you implementing in your rookie drafts this year? But with all that said, let's get right to this Dynasty Rewind War Room mock draft. All right, so I am up at the 101 in this Superflex rookie mock draft, and I know it's, it's 2 quarterback Superflex, supposed to go that way, but I can't help but go Breece Hall every single time at the 101 this year. If you want to take one of these top wide receivers, I'm okay with that. That's fine by me. But in all honesty, I just think Breece Hall is the way this year. I do think Kenny Pickett being the only quarterback really that should go in the first round should get pushed up boards. So in all honesty, if you wanted to take him at the 104, 105, I think you could probably do that. I think you should probably take Kenneth Walker ahead of him because, in my opinion, 2 surefire running backs in this draft this year, those should get pushed up the board, as well as the only quarterback that's at least guaranteed to get a starting position at some point.
Easy pick. Don't overthink this one. He's the 101. Even with the Jets landing spot, you're not scared about Michael Carter. I think it's a very easy 1-2 this year. There's 2 running backs worthwhile. Grab those 2 with your first 2 picks. After that, it's a bunch of wide receivers and Kenny Pickett.
I do want to say that Breece Hall seems to be the consensus 101 Superflex, single quarterback. And I did see a tweet that says, if you take Breece Hall 101, that's the reason why you're picking at the 101. I think that's terrible analysis. I think he has great potential upside. I think he has possibility to be the starter from day one. It's because you're picking at 101. People think that you're picking there just because you're a bad team. Not necessarily true. You could have traded for that pick. I think Breece Hall at the 101 is a fantastic pick. I understand that wide receivers have better long-term overall value, but if you need a running back, this class does not have a ton of surefire guys that are starting running backs from day one. Breece Hall could be that guy. Kenneth Walker at the 1-2 seems to be pretty general consensus right there as well. These first 2 picks. Kenneth Walker, Seattle's a great landing spot. Chris Carson has trouble staying on the field. Rashad Penny, I'm still not sold, although he did finish out the season pretty well last year. There's a bunch of guys behind him. Alex Collins was putzing around, DJ Dallas, Travis Homer. Not really anything of relevance, to be honest with you.
So I know usually these quarterbacks are going to go in prior years, but this year it looks like I'm going to be getting one of the top receivers. Most likely will probably be George Pickens for me, but we'll see how that goes.
Drake London, the 103. You want to talk about a riser? 8th overall to the Atlanta Falcons. Did not see him being the first wide receiver selected. I mean, his stock is way up. Way up.
Don't hate it one bit. Probably had the best landing spot, in my opinion. Going to Atlanta, going to get peppered with targets there. Going to be the 1 or 2 option there with Kyle Pitts.
Drake London is the consensus 103. I've seen a lot. He's a wide receiver 1 in this draft class by a lot of people's measure. Not me. Not a huge Drake London fan as a prospect, number 1. And the Atlanta Falcons offense, I mean, what? Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ritter. Either way, I'm not super excited about it.
So at the 104 here, I'm going to go and stick with my board. I know it's against other people's boards, but I have to go with my gut. George Pickens went to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is a perfect spot in my eyes, because I feel like Deontay Johnson is not going to get re-signed next year, and I think it's just to the moon with him and Chase Claypool. So I'm going to go with my number 1 guy here.
Wow. Porkman put his money where his mouth is, and he drafted George Pickens. Porkman really thinks that George Pickens is, one of the most talented wide receivers in the draft class. I think Deontay Johnson is playing his last season with the Steelers. So George Pickens could be the wide receiver 1 for the next 3-4 years for the Steelers. And, that pick could look really good a year from now.
Phil Porkman Simmons sticking to his guns with George Pickens at the 1-4, a little rich for my blood. The main reason being is if you're taking him that high, A, you believe in him as a prospect. B, you believe in him in the landing spot, which I think is fine. But you have to have a pretty strong conviction that they believe that he's going to be their wide receiver 1 within the next year or 2. That being said, I think it's possible because Deontay Johnson may or may not get paid. They may decide to trade him. Chase Claypool is coming into a contract year as well. Not this year, but I believe next year. So it's one of those things. if that's your conviction, that's your belief, fine. I wouldn't advocate taking him that high. I would try to trade back if anything else.
George Pickens goes at the 1-4. That's a pretty pork man pick right there. Personally, I feel like his value is somewhat depressed since the draft, the NFL draft. I feel like that's too high for George Pickens. Steve takes Jameson Williams at the 105. I'm much more comfortable with Jameson Williams at the 1-5 than I am with George Pickens at the 1-4. So there's still Chris Olave's on the board. Garrett Wilson's on the board. Treylon Burks are on the board. These are guys that could be contributing from day one. I don't see George Pickens stepping in and being a day one contributor. I could be wrong, but right now I just don't see it happening. There's been some character concerns. I think if there's a guy that could get that out of Pickens, it's Mike Tomlin. Still, too fancy for me.
I love J-Mo. I'm not really seeing him as a wide receiver 3 off the board. I think people are kind of down on the Lions landing spot, even though I think it's great long term. And he has the injury. I have him top 3, top 4 wide receiver in this draft class. So I'm okay with him being picked at the 105. Absolutely.
Garrett Wilson at the 1-6. I love it. My man Gator taking Garrett Wilson at the 1-6. He's still my wide receiver 1. I believe in that talent. And I don't care who else is there. Maybe Zach Wilson's good enough to support 2.5 wide receivers. Like it could be Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson 1 week, Elijah Moore, Corey Davis another week, Corey Davis, Garrett Wilson. We don't know. CJ Uzoma's there too. We got some pass catchers and Michael Carter. Breece Hall could catch the ball. It's going to be really interesting. And you know what, dude? Go Jets.
I think it's crazy how much Burks has fallen. Even with the landing spot, people don't, still are placing 3-4 wide receivers above Burks. And they just replaced A.J. Brown with Burks. They obviously are going to get him the ball. And I think Burks is talented enough to replicate that production in the next 2-3 years. So do you want A.J. Brown? Get Treylon Burks. I kind of like Malik Willis there too. I know it was a little bit later than we expected. Not like Ryan Tannehill is top quarterback in the NFL.
Kenny Pickett is perfect right here, in my opinion, for Superflex, but it should be the only quarterback taken in the first round. If he doesn't go Pickett, he's a fraud.
I don't think there's any way Kenny Pickett gets by Mike Bauer here. Probably going to rant about how he was his quarterback 1 all along. The NFL told you so as well, and how everything is great and shiny for Kenny Pickett.
Kenny Pickett's going here. Michael Bauer probably would have picked up Kenny Pickett at the 103.
I'm up at the 1-8. What should I do? This is a super flex league. It feels like it's just falling into my lap here. I have no problem taking Kenny Pickett at the 1-8.
Yep. Kenny Pickett to Mike. We knew that was going to happen.
What a surprise. Mike goes Kenny Pickett at the 108. Honestly, I think Kenny Pickett landed in a great spot. Not only that he went in the first round, landing with all those weapons around him. Kenny Pickett has a lot to build around him. He has a great running back, has 3 great wide receivers. Calvin Austin is a great 4th option. He also has Pat Freiermuth. So if Kenny Pickett wasn't high on your board beforehand, if you were concerned about him at all as a prospect, at bare minimum, he has great pieces around him. They could do a little bit more to improve that offensive line, but you got to take what you can.
I like Kenny Pickett to the Steelers, especially with the draft they just had with George Pickens. And also grabbing Calvin Austin. They just loaded up on wide receivers there. They have 4 decent ones they can throw out there.
I've been the guy taking Kenny Pickett in the first round of every single mock draft this offseason. Superflex 1 quarterback. Didn't matter where I was picking. Well, unless I was picking really high. I said he was my quarterback 1 for a reason. I saw what he can do. He ran a pro-style offense at Pitt. He's going to fit in perfectly. Matt Canada, the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive coordinator, helped to recruit Kenny Pickett. The NFL showed you why Kenny Pickett should be the quarterback 1 in Dynasty from this class. He was the only one with first-round draft capital. Okay? We had Desmond Ritter, Malik Willis, Matt Corral. These guys all went later. I got to be honest with you. Of those 3, I like Desmond Ritter the best. And if I could come back and grab Desmond Ritter later, I'm going to see if I could do that too.
I'm really curious to see where Nate goes here. This used to be a slam Jahan Dotson pick, no doubt about it. I think we're probably going to be looking at maybe Sky Moore or Christian Watson, but looking at the board, maybe even Rachaad White. I could see that. Rachaad White is a plus landing spot for me. Has that receiving upside that he'll also be able to be functioning as a handcuff for Leonard Fournette at the absolute worst. Could be the running back of the future there in Tampa Bay.
Do you think maybe the board should be London Burks up towards the top? Because I understand that Dynasty is long-term, but we want to win now because these are both guys right here that could contribute from day one and be the alpha wide receivers on their team. Robert Woods still nursing an injury. The Atlanta Falcons wide receiver room, massive question mark. These guys could step in and be super relevant from day one. Pickens might not happen. Jameson Williams coming off the ACL tear. Garrett Wilson, he has competition there. Unlike these other guys, it's a legitimate question. It's something that's definitely worth thinking about.
Got the guy that I want on the board still. We'll see if Heifer snipes me. If I don't get Dotson, I'm looking at either Chris Olave or Sky Moore. Pretty close, but I think Chris Olave has a pretty sneaky, good landing spot across from Michael Thomas, though I like Sky Moore to the Kansas City Chiefs. Who doesn't? It's a great landing spot. And there goes Chris Olave off the board, leaving me with my pick, my easy pick here. Guy was drafted in the first half of the first round of the NFL draft. That's great draft capital, great investment by the Washington Commanders into Jahan Dotson. They obviously believe in him, believe in the talent, the playmaking ability, and he's going to work out of the slot. We've seen Carson Wentz just, target the slot a ton in his time with the Philadelphia Eagles. While Terry McLaurin's still going to be a good wide receiver, he is in a contract year. Jahan Dotson is probably the future of the Washington Commanders. They've realized that you have to pay up for wide receivers, and they're probably not going to want to pay Terry McLaurin what he's worth. So they drafted Jahan Dotson to be the new number one going forward after this year. Jahan Dotson, easy pick here. You're getting a stud wide receiver at the end of the first round. If you have a championship roster that's competing here, you're just adding on a great flex player. He's going to be in your flex, but he's going to be a wide receiver 2-3. And a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, how'd you pick Jahan Dotson over Sky Moore or Christian Watson?" I just think Jahan Dotson's a lot more talent than those guys.
Nate does stick to his guns and go with Jahan Dotson there. That is, don't love the landing spot there unless similar to Pickens. If you have the conviction that Terry McLaurin might not be there in 2-3 years via trade or via letting him walk in free agency, maybe, but man, I don't see it there. I think by this time in drafts, you're going to see a lot of Sky Moore coming off the board. Had one of our patrons had him go as the 104 in a draft. We did have one of our YouTube commenters say that Christian Watson went at the 101 in a league, which is just mind-boggling to me.
The draft darling himself, Sky Moore, goes at the 111. You want to talk about an ascension. Now, obviously, a lot of the people that run in the dynasty and fantasy circles, they knew all about Sky Moore. Maybe you didn't. Sky Moore, Western Michigan, biggest hands in the wide receiving class. Sky Moore is pretty good. I feel like Sky Moore is getting a bump because he was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. And we see this happen all the time. We saw it happen with Nicole Hardman. People overvalued Sammy Watkins. They overvalued Brian Pringle, guys like that, just because of that arrow on their helmet. And I have to be honest with you, Sky Moore is a guy that's going to get overvalued. At the 111, I don't hate it. I really just don't like the back end of this draft, man. I got to be honest with you. Anything after the 17, 18, I really feel like I'm trying to trade back.
So we do see Sky Moore come off the board at the 111. I think this is pretty good value for him. I think he's a guy that's going to get pushed up boards in a lot of drafts. Kansas City wide receiver, fits that Tyreek Hill mold, quote unquote. Don't think that necessarily myself, but I do think he is a weapon for that team, and I think they drafted him with some confidence.
I think I'm looking to get a Rashad White or Damian Pierce. I'm not the highest on James Cook. I know he had an okay landing spot. I'm just not the highest on him. I'm looking to get a Pierce at the 204, but I think Bob is going to block me there.
Speaking of drafting with confidence, Zach goes and drafts Damian Pierce at the 112. Man, I honestly kind of love that pick. I'm a big Damian Pierce believer. I know there's a lot of people that are down on him because he just never got a lot of work. Not an athletic specimen by any stretch of the imagination, but the dude is just a banger. So love the pick. Him in Houston, I think he's got a great chance to really, blossom. He has a chance to get a starting role right away pretty early. So while I don't love him at the 112, it is what it is. I love the pick either which way. Not a pick I'd make. I'd probably look for that 2.3, 2.5 range. Probably where I'd be pretty happy taking him.
Damian Pierce, who Zach took at the 112. I feel like that's a bit of a reach for Damian Pierce. I understand that, a lot of people are saying he could be the starter from day one, and he could. But if not Damian Pierce, why not Isaiah Spiller then? Isaiah Spiller is a more talented back. He's going into what projects to be a better offense. Wouldn't you rather have a piece of a better offense than a potential starter on a terrible offense that can't stay on the field with a worse quarterback? It's just one way to look at it.
Damian Pierce, the 112, I get it. He could be the running back one for that team, but Marlon Mack is there. Damian Pierce doesn't really seem to be the running back one for that team, like a workload bell cow kind of running back. So it's a little bold at the 112. Unfortunately, you're probably going to have to, get your running backs, those mid-tier running backs in the second round. But I personally do not value them at the second round. You're going to have to reach for them, though, because it's a positional need. We always need more running backs on our dynasty teams.
I'm going to go ahead with my pick here. And I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to go ahead and take Christian Watson here. This is one of the first times I've actually seen him slide all the way to the second round. And I think this is pretty good value. I think this is appropriate for Christian Watson. I think you could see him at the tail end of the first. That'd be fine. I think if you go Pierce or if you go Watson instead of Pierce, I think that's fine. It's one of those things Packers, traded up a boatload to get him, sent a ton of capital to the Vikings of all teams. While I do totally believe he's a little raw, if you look at things like breakout age, his wasn't great. He dominated, put up decent stats against not great competition. So there are some red flags there for me personally. Between talent, just crazy athletic upside, and then you have the landing spot. It's a pretty decent pick and a good upside swing to swing on at the end of the first round. Early second, I think, is pretty good value. We see Brian Robinson, actually one of the highest spots I've seen him go in these drafts. But hey, I like it. I'm here for the Antonio Gibson baby mama drama that there's going to be. I have a ton of Antonio Gibson shares, so it's definitely a little bit of controversy for me, in my opinion. And if you have Antonio Gibson, don't do these, mental backflips trying to justify drafting Brian Robinson here. The Commanders brought in 5 running backs out of the 30 people they could bring to visit their facility. They brought in 5 running backs. And to me, that says something that they might not be as sold on the running back position as we like to think. The cool thing about Brian Robinson is he could actually kind of take over that backfield role entirely, I think. He offers a lot as a runner as well as a pass catching running back or a third down operator.
Brian Robinson does everything pretty good. He's not super flashy. He's not bad. He's a good running back. And I think that's sometimes what a team just needs is a really solid, reliable running back.
Why Brian Robinson just went, so that kind of makes my life a little bit easier. I think here I like the prospect of Rachaad White going to Tampa Bay. I don't think they're going to use a lot of Leonard Fournette there. So I'm going to go with Rachaad right here at the 204. And I think that's good value for him there. See if I can sneak a Zamir White in the third. Not too sure if he's going to make it there for me. I think he's one of those guys that might not do anything for this year, but for next year after Josh Jacobs is going after to decline his option, I'm looking at seeing if I can slide him in at the 304 because I think people are not really thinking about him too much. I know a lot of people are higher on the James Cook on what he can do from the passing upside, but I like Zamir White.
There's one player I'm really glad who hasn't come off the board yet, and we'll see if he comes off anytime soon.
So look, we're on a mini running back run here. Gator was probably looking to get Pierce here at the 206. I know he's a resident Florida Gator fan, but he went with an awesome pick here at Alec Pierce going to the Colts. Alec Pierce is a wonderful route runner, and I think he's going to excel immensely in that offense. It's weird to see Trey McBride fall. He's been going between the 201 to 205 in recent mocks, but I think because he went to the Cardinals, I think they see Ertz there, they see Max Williams there. I think they're starting to devalue him a slight bit. I don't think he's going to make it to 304 to me, but if he's there, I might take him between him or Malik Willis. I'm looking to take him in that area, just scanning through this mock right now.
There he goes. This is a guy I can get behind him at this spot in the draft. But James Cook, I just cannot believe where he is being drafted. He's being drafted at the back middle half of first rounds or earlier. Seen him the earliest at the 107 already, and I believe the 106 in one of my own drafts. And I just cannot do it. In one of my rookie drafts today, he went ahead of Kenneth Walker. I know the big knock on Kenneth Walker is going to be his pass catching prowess, but I just don't see James Cook having a real big role in Buffalo. The only way I see him succeeding is if he's used as the third down / passing down back that also gets mixed in on gadgety plays in and out of the slot. And, even simple stuff out of the backfield like wheels and flat routes. Anything like that, fine. Maybe he pays off, but if you're expecting, and I know not everybody is, but if you're expecting Stephon Diggs, Dawson Knox, Gabe Davis to have anything worthwhile and James Cook. Josh Allen has to throw for 5,000 plus yards, probably 40 plus touchdowns, not run for any touchdowns. Everything has to be throwing. I can get behind James Cook at the 2.7. I can live with that at that point. Fine pick.
James Cook at the 2.7. I don't know why these other guys went before him. He had the best draft capital. Not saying that I necessarily believe in, his upcoming fantasy production. I don't really believe in any of these guys past the first two. So you're reaching on these running backs. It's going to happen in every draft you're in, and you can just sit here and get the wide receiver talent. If you need running backs, trade your picks for running backs or trade your picks for 2023 picks, because this is not the class to get them unless you have the first two. Sure, one of these guys, maybe two of these guys will pop off, and we'll think, well, we missed on one of these guys. It could happen.
You want a guy who's going to have high upside? Mike Davis just got released today. Tyler Algiere to the Atlanta Falcons. I like this spot a lot, to be honest with you, for him. There is a potential that he is a starting running back. Damian Williams was signed. Damian Williams has not been relevant for quite some time. Tyler Algiere is a guy that can come in right now and be way more competent of a running back than Mike Davis was last year.
And Tyler Algiere was, prior to the draft, going, in the third, sometimes even in the fourth, so his stock shot straight up. And I know Mike was actually a fan of Tyler Algiere, so I'll give him props for that.
I will say, I think Tyler Algiere is a bit of a reach in the second round. Right after the day after the draft was all finished, guys like Brian Robinson, Isaiah Spiller, even James Cook, he's always been too overdrafted. Tyler Algiere, we're all going in like the third round, and I think that's pretty good value. But now we should be drafting guys that are more than likely starting wide receivers on teams. Keep letting those type of running backs keep sliding to the next round.
There's Tyler Algiere, the 2.8. This is ridiculous. You're drafting day 3 running backs all throughout the second round. This isn't the way to do it.
Like, I'm going to probably grab Zamir White if he's around. I'm not going to go ahead and just say, yeah, I'm totally banking on him supplanting Josh Jacobs, but they denied Josh Jacobs' 5th-year option. So it's one of those things. Next year, Zamir White could be their cheap replacement.
This is part of the draft where it starts getting a little sticky. A lot of guys don't know who to take. So this is where the teardrop just falls off the face of the earth. David Bell, he's a wide receiver 3 now for the Cleveland Browns with Donovan Peoples-Jones and Amari Cooper. So I think he can fit there and have some sort of a role. But I know a lot of people are down on him after looking at the film, seeing that he's not really as explosive as they thought he was. Good route runner, but not the perfect prospect, as we could say. Nate is going Jalen Tolbert. This is the easiest pick of the draft. I know it's the 210. Goes to the Dallas Cowboys, which is a great landing spot for him. So if you had to take Jalen Tolbert here, he's an absolute fraud.
Coming up to my pick here, I got Malik Willis in my queue because this is super flex. He's still day 2 draft capital. He went to a spot where I think he sits a year and then maybe there's a competition in 2023 or 2024. Either way, I think Malik Willis is good. And with the 210, you see all these people reaching for running backs. There's not really too many good wide receivers on the board left, so I might as well take a stab at a quarterback that could be a game changer in my fantasy team. So I'm going to go ahead and grab Malik Willis because you got to take a stab at a guy with this much talent in the fantasy community. The ability to run on the ground and pick up yards and touchdowns, extend plays. It's risky, especially with the 3rd round draft capital.
Finally see our second quarterback, and this is about where I think quarterbacks should start coming off. Quarterbacks being that did not go in the 1st or 2nd round of the NFL draft. Malik Willis, I think, should probably be the first one off the board as well. I could get down with Desmond Ritter going ahead of him just because he got a little bit higher draft capital, and there's a slight smaller chance that Desmond Ritter is able to start in year 1.
Second quarterback off the board. So Nate is still believing in Malik Willis's talent. And I'll be honest with you, at the 210, I'm still probably not taking Malik Willis, 3rd round draft pick of the Titans. I would rather Desmond Ritter. I feel like he has a clearer path to starting. Does Malik Willis have a higher ceiling? Maybe. We don't know. But the fact is, if he's not on the field, it doesn't matter. Who's it going to be harder to beat out? Marcus Mariota? Ryan Tannehill? I understand talent over opportunity, but if you have no opportunity to showcase your talent, it's a moot point.
You went with Malik Willis. Wow. I am shocked at that one. I think he was just looking at value there. It makes sense. I like the pick there.
Another guy that is just flying up boards and was a great value 2 days ago is already screaming up boards. You see Davis Price come off the board, and he was a great value a few days ago, and now he's just not anymore. He was going in the third or fourth round, late third, early fourth. It's just not there anymore, and it was awesome when it was, and now it's just not, and that sucks.
There goes another running back that shouldn't be drafted nearly as high. Tyrion Davis Price went to the 49ers, and I say that shouldn't have been drafted that high in real life as well as in fantasy football. He is no threat to Elijah Mitchell, let's be honest. And also, he does not deserve the day 2 draft capital.
Tyron Davis Price goes off the board at the 211, one of my lowest graded players that I scouted. Not a good athlete, good size, plays a lot smaller than his size. He looks like he's 5'8". He's 6'1". He just disappears. He's not anything special. Doesn't see holes very well. He's like overly patient. He's 6'1", 232 pounds. He's not overly powerful, not elusive. I am probably not touching him in any drafts. And I can guarantee I am not touching him in the second round. Superflex 1 quarterback, I don't care.
Matt Corral went. That's a value pick. I'm looking at 304. If I get Zamir White at the 304, I will be ecstatic.
Matt Corral goes off the board. It's a nice landing spot. There's not really anybody ahead of him. Sam Darnold, but we don't really trust Sammy Dewey.
I'm going to go ahead and take the best tight end in this draft, and I'm going to go ahead and snake Trey McBride. At the 3-1, I think that's pretty stellar value. I'm going to draft a tight end who I think is probably the starting tight end by year 2 or 3 at least, honestly. Thing is when all these running backs are going, the Tyler Algiers, the Brian Robinsons, the Davis Price, the guys that were falling to the third round push value down the board when they get reached on.
That was a good pick there. That was a great value pick. Like I said, he's been in the top half of the draft, and it looks like a Trey McBride is that's a good value pick there at the 301. That's a perfect pick by Bob. I love that 100%.
There goes Trey McBride at the 301. I expect that out of Bob. He makes a good pick here. Great value at this point, even a non-premium league. Trey McBride goes to Arizona Cardinals. He's going to sit behind Zach Ertz, but we've seen this before. 1 year, 2 years, whatever it is, the tight end is going to break out. And Trey McBride's a really good one. He's really solid in all aspects of the game. And hey, DeAndre Hopkins just got suspended. So maybe Trey McBride is used more in 2 tight end sets. Maybe the Cardinals decide to use more, 12 personnel. Let's see.
I'm real curious to see what's kicking around at my 4th round pick. It's going to be interesting trying to scroll down a bit in the ADP because it's still not quite up to date. It's better than it was a couple days ago. Definitely adjusting a bit, but it's still nowhere near perfect.
I don't know what to think of Desmond Ritter. He goes late, very toolsy, but Falcons also don't really have the same kind of situation as Matt Corral. It's a pretty open spot to the quarterback position. If he might get a start or 2 this year with the draft capital, if the Falcons are picking top 5 again, they're going to draft a quarterback next year. Desmond Ritter is not going to stop them from drafting a quarterback next year. Tennessee, they're not going to finish with a top 5 pick most likely. So I'm not as worried about Malik Willis, but Corral and Ritter, they have to really show out this year if they're going to stop their team from drafting a quarterback next year.
I was thought about taking Zamir White in a second, but I figure I like Rashad White with the Bucks. But I got my guy at the 304, Zamir White. I feel as though he's going to get some playing time next year due to them declining Josh Jacobs' option. So I'm thinking they're just not going to bring him back. It's a cheaper option to have Zamir White come in, and I think he's going to be the RB1 on the team and a possible soon-to-be RB2 on the season. That's the type of talent that I think he has in the league.
My man, Jalen Tolbert, goes off the board at 3-5. I think that's a great deal. He's going to be the wide receiver 2 there in the Cowboys until Michael Gallup's back. And then he's going to be the wide receiver 3 in hopefully a high-powered offense with lots of passing. And we've seen before, when Dallas is on a roll, they can have 3 fantasy-relevant wide receivers. And I think Jalen Tolbert has some really good potential.
Bit of an interesting pick. We see Cade Otton actually go ahead of Greg Dulcich, and I think a lot of this is probably based on landing spot. Going to Tampa Bay, where the first option right now is Cameron Braid. Cade Otton's a pretty solid all-around tight end, and I think a system like that actually utilizes the tight end pretty frequently, especially a quarterback that uses the tight end and Tom Brady.
Tampa Bay, if Rob Gronkowski does not come back, maybe Cade Otton does get in some opportunity year 1, and if he does, he would be the most valuable tight end out of this group for sure, because I don't think this group has a lot of day one opportunity and talent. But I think there's a couple guys here that, if you wait 2 or 3 years, they might, be relevant for your fantasy team. But K. Dunn probably has the best chance to be, a week one starter for your fantasy team if Gronk doesn't come back.
This is when it starts getting a little bit rough around the edges. There's some good guys around here, like a Wandale, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I like Shakir.
As you can see, not many quarterbacks picked so far. I mean, 4 main quarterbacks have been picked so far, but at this point last year, we were starting to take Davis Mills off the board. We were starting to take Kellen Mond and guys like that. And, this was supposed to be the top of the class, and this really become the mid-tier of the class. They're really, Kenny Pickett's at the top all by himself. Greg Dalsich, I like this pick a lot. I think Greg Dalsich is going to get opportunity in front of Albert O. Maybe Albert O is the starter in week one, but I think I like Dalsich a bit more than Albert O. So, with where they drafted him, I think they're going to give him the opportunity to be a starter on their team over Albert O. And I was saying this way before the draft. Everyone was getting excited about Albert O. And I just kept saying, if anything, this just makes Denver Broncos one of the top teams to draft a tight end in this upcoming draft. And look, they did it. They found their guy. Dalsich was their guy. They drafted him. And he's a good pass catcher. He was very productive for UCLA. Great efficiency stats. I think he's going to pair well with Russell Wilson.
It is getting gross. I don't know who I want. Do we want to just swing for the fences? Do we want to go for upside? If you think Debo is going to get moved, then you could take a guy like the guy I'm going to take right now. Danny Gray from SMU. Look, Danny Gray is good. Pretty physical for a guy that's pretty thin too. Great after the catch, runs really nice routes, and I think he was a fantastic draft pick by the 49ers. Happy to get him into 3-8. The way I'm going to say it is this. When you are scouting players, make sure you're looking at the ancillary players around them, okay? Guys that are around them. That's how you find diamonds like this guy. I was just there to scout Reggie Roberson, and I keep hearing Danny Gray's name popping up, and I'm like, oh, this guy's eligible. I'm going to scout him too. And I ended up liking Danny Gray a lot. So just keep your eyes open when you're scouting players.
Definitely would not take a Quinte Ingram here. Not the biggest fan of his film at all.
I got sniped here. Quinte Ingram at the 3-9. I really like his opportunity. I like him as a player, but he got great opportunity with the Arizona Cardinals sitting behind James Conner, who we know gets injured. He's better than Eno Benjamin. So Ingram's going to have opportunity this year unless they bring in another veteran. He's going to have opportunity, so he's definitely worth a 3rd-round pick. It's kind of crazy that Wan'Dale Robinson's still available. I know the Giants' landing spot maybe isn't the greatest, but also it's not that hard to become the number 1 wide receiver in the Giants' wide receiver room. So I don't know if Wan'Dale is going to do it, but if anyone's going to do it, he has a shot to do it. And at the 3-10, I'm going to get a guy that was drafted in the 2nd round. Maybe you can call him this year's Tutu Atwell, but I think that's much more Tyquan Thornton. Wan'Dale Robinson, Kadarius Toney, kind of similar players. Don't really know what the Giants are trying to do here. But if they're just trying to get playmakers around Daniel Jones, maybe manufacture some touches, I don't see why Wan'Dale can't be one of the guys that pops off for them. If anything, he's going to have some great games, maybe be inconsistent. And maybe I can flip him for at least more than a 3rd, a late 3rd at that. Great value. He's going to play. He's going to have a couple games he goes off, and I can at least get a 2nd for him. I think if you see him anywhere in your 3rd round, you should be drafting Wan'Dale Robinson.
I'm kind of a Tyquan Thornton fan, not just because of his speed. He has a really good body control downfield. I know a lot of people aren't the biggest fan of his, but me personally, I like what I saw on tape.
He picked Tyquan Thornton. Speed kills. Kills you when you dropped it. I mean, at 3-11, why not? I don't hate the value. If you're drafting Tyquan Thornton in your 2nd round, then you got some issues. Late 3rd, I don't mind it at all. Same reason I like Wan'Dale, 2nd round draft capital. It's a guy that they're going to try to get involved in their offense. And, Tyquan Thornton, maybe he's just a deep threat on the team, but same thing. He's going to have a couple games maybe where he, pops off for 100 yards and a touchdown. See what you can get out of him. He's got a decent frame, over 6 foot with that kind of speed. He needs to add a lot of weight, which would change the way he plays most likely, but not a bad player to take a chance on. He's going to be the wide receiver 3 in that team probably. Khalil Shakir at the 3-12. I think that's a steal. I think Shakir, if Wan'Dale was on the board, I would have easily been picking Shakir. I love him a lot. I think he's got a lot of talent playing out of the slot. And if he can get ahead of Jameson Crowder on that offense and that depth chart out of the slot, he's going to do great things for your fantasy team, especially being picked up this late.
Somehow, some way, I keep getting Romeo Doubs at the 4-1 in these drafts. And honestly, for a guy that was going undrafted in our 4-round mock drafts or in the 4th round of our mock drafts, he goes to a plus landing spot in the 4th round, early day 3. It's not like he was a 7th round pick or anything like that. You know, Green Bay showed that they believe in this guy at least a little bit. I wouldn't normally take 2 of the same team rookie wide receivers in a draft, but the value at this point is too good to pass up on.
Bob takes Romeo Doubs at the 4-1. I like that. I mean, at the 4-1, I'd probably rather have him, to be honest with you, over Wan'Dale Robinson, over Tyquan Thornton, over Khalil Shakir, and maybe even over my own pick at the 3-8 with Danny Gray.
Romeo Doubs, a similar guy that I'm pretty high on as a dart throw, goes to an offense where there's not really any, set in stone wide receivers on that team. Comes in with 6'2" size, 200 pounds. Plays well after the catch, gives him some size and deep ability. I think he fits Aaron Rodgers pretty well. They did draft Christian Watson though, and they have Sammy Watkins as well and Alan Lazard. So it is a bit crowded with a bunch of mid-tier wide receivers. But if Romeo Doubs can show himself up in the first couple weeks or training camp, then you might have a steal here, the 4-1. This is a guy I'm willing to take a shot on in the 4th round, into the 3rd round for sure. Jelani Woods, this is a good pick here. He's athletic, raw, very raw, I think. Athletic, and the Colts have a hole at the tight end position. So the fact that they drafted this guy, I think they're looking for him to produce pretty quickly. And there's a chance that Woods comes in and produces pretty quickly. He's more athletic than a lot of these other guys, and they just got to get him the ball. And I don't think there's too many issues with that because he can get down the field. He's a big target, 6'7" in the red zone. They can definitely get him the ball.
I've been trying to tell you guys for a hot minute, dump your 4th and 5th round picks. At this point in the draft, it's a 2.5 round draft at probably best more often than not, because unless you're getting guys like Brian Robinson, Tyler Algiere, Davis Price in the 3rd round like Zamir White, I got nothing for you. I just don't want anything to do with the 4th and 5th round unless I can somehow get Doubs. I don't see him being there more often than not.
I don't see much running backs here that I really, really think are going to be fancy relevant. Maybe a Justin Ross is a value pick. I like him, but how long will he be playing in the league? Maybe I can take that risk in the 4th. That might be something I'm willing to take a risk on. I'm gonna just slide to Justin Ross at the 4-4 and see what happens. This is one of those picks where it's like it's a total upside pick. It's either he's at the top or he's at the bottom, and I don't want to reach for a Jerome Ford, which I don't know what they're going to do with the Kareem Hunt yet. I love the talent, but I think Justin Ross has the talent as well, and it can be up to the moon for him in that Kansas City offense.
Justin Ross of the 4-4. I know he went undrafted. I know he didn't get signed for a day or two after the draft, but he went to the Chiefs. That's great, number 1. But also Justin Ross, there's nothing wrong with his talent. It's just the medical red flags. And with the 4th round pick, if he ends up doing nothing, you're okay with it. You took a chance on the talent. That could get you pretty far. If he explodes, Justin Ross has the potential to be a great wide receiver in the NFL. He's not the usual guy that goes undrafted. So I am completely fine taking him here. I think this is great value for Justin Ross. I took him in the 3rd round of a 1 quarterback rookie draft I just did for one of my dynasty leagues.
Jerome Ford goes at the 4-5. So a lot of people are like, I hate that spot. Ernest Johnson has been relevant at times for whatever reason, injury, suspensions, whatever it's been. Jerome Ford is better than D'Ernest Johnson. So if D'Ernest Johnson has a chance to be relevant, Jerome Ford does too. Okay. There's been talks of Kareem Hunt possibly getting moved on from. There's a possibility he's the number 2 in an offense that likes to run the ball a lot.
Jerome Ford's a guy I don't really subscribe to the hype train of, going to Cleveland, run heavy scheme, still buried on the depth chart behind 3 other starters. D'Ernest Johnson only had a 1-year tender. Kareem Hunt got 1 year left on his deal. I believe they can still cut him and save some money. I could be wrong there. Not really somebody I'm going to target in the late rounds.
Jerome Ford. I like Jerome Ford a lot. Went to an unlucky spot with the Cleveland Browns, but also a lot could change with that running back room. Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are a little bit older. So Jerome Ford, you never know. He could be, a couple snaps away from getting meaningful play.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take Ezukanma because I've been talking him up. I think the guy I want to go next will still be there when I go to pick. So Eric Ezukanma, he went to Miami. He's a different wide receiver than what they have in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I mean, those guys, pure speed. It's just amazing how fast Tyreek Hill is. But Ezukanma projects to me as your prototypical outside wide receiver. Big, physical, contested catch, but he can separate too. He can get behind defenses. So I love the landing spot. There's a potential that he could be the 3 there. You know what I mean? And I understand you're going to cue in on Tyreek. You're going to cue in on Jalen Waddle. Ezukanma could have a lot of cushy targets out there.
We got Jeremy Ruckert. I'm probably going to take a chance on him because even though the Jets signed 2 tight ends this year, they drafted Jeremy Ruckert, and I think he's better than both tight ends, or at least has more potential than both of them for fantasy football. There goes Jeremy Ruckert. Right in front of me. Naturally. So now I'm looking at not a lot here. This is where it starts to get pretty rough. But I have to draft somebody. So I'm looking at Calvin Austin. I'm looking at Tyler Batty, maybe Kyle Phillips. I don't mind going after one of the Baltimore tight ends, but they're limited with Mark Andrews in front of him. And I don't really want to have to pick one if I don't have to. Looking at Tyler Batty or Calvin Austin, I'm going to take the chance on the wide receiver 4 versus the running back 3. Just think there's more chance there. Calvin Austin. Kyle Phillips. I do like Kyle Phillips. Think he has a good floor. I think he'll be in the NFL for a long time, but not sure he's going to really matter about your dynasty team for many seasons. But once again, 412, guy I don't mind taking a shot on.
So now we're here in the 5th, and this is when it's the nitty gritty. And there's not a lot of people that I like down here.
So we're starting the 5th round. At this point, it's the kind of like priority UDFAs in the NFL. These are just guys that you like. You're not worried about what anyone else thinks. There's no value here, really. You're just getting your guys. Forget ADP at this point. You probably could have forgot it midway through the 4th, if not early 4th round. ADP does not matter. Get somebody that you like, someone you think is talented, someone that you think has a depth chart opportunity. Any edge, any advantage that you can find, it's worth it in the 5th round because the chance of any of these guys hitting is very small, especially with you knowing that they're going to hit. It's nearly impossible. So find any advantage you can, any edge you can, and then just go for it. Go for it with your 5th round pick. It might be a guy that you want to get off waivers, but you don't want to spend the $3 of fab that's going to cost to get them off waivers. So you might as well spend your 5th round pick on them. Make sure you get them, and then throw them in your taxi squad for 2 years. If anything happens, you can bring them up. If not, just go off your taxi squad and get replaced with another 5th rounder a couple years from now. These 5th round picks, I'm not really projecting any of these guys to succeed, but I do see ways for these guys to succeed. And 1 or 2 of them will in some format. Maybe they're not a top 12, top 24 dynasty wide receiver for 5 years. But, say they win you a couple weeks in a season and you win a championship about it, it's worth it.
I'm just going to go with what I think is probably the highest upside running back in this scenario. Going to go with Isaiah Pacheco, Kansas City running back, drafted in the 7th round, I believe. Solid runner, nothing too flashy, but, Kansas City has done pretty good with their, later round running backs. Garrett Williams, for example, not a guy who was drafted highly. So who knows what'll happen with this guy. If CH struggles, if any of the other running backs there struggle, this guy could pretty easily see some reps, I think.
Now, Bob takes Isaiah Pacheco from Rutgers. He takes him at the 5-1. And he was taken by the Kansas City Chiefs, I believe, in the 7th round. And I love the landing spot. I love the spot here, too. He was someone that I would think about targeting. He's actually not the guy that I'm planning on targeting, so I hope he gets back to me. Abram Smith goes at the 5-3. He was a UDFA for the Saints. I don't want anything to do with Abram Smith, to be honest with you. I thought he was really boring. He had no production. I understand that he flip-flopped back and forth between linebacker and running back. He had 1 solid season. I'm just out on Abram Smith. I didn't think he did anything really well. And I understand that the 5th round is get your guy, but nah.
I think I'm going to go with the tight end from Tennessee. I'm not going to try to say his name again, so I'm going to embarrass myself. But he's super athletic, and he's going to Tennessee. He can grow with a Malik Willis, and/or play well with the Ryan Tannehill this year. The workout warrior, I'll take a shot on him. He's fast. I think they're going to try to treat him like a Jonnu Smith.
Tight end out of the University of Maryland. I like this draft pick a lot. He went to the Tennessee Titans. There's a possibility that he could be somewhat relevant. Titans have been kind of looking for a guy since Jonnu Smith left, or even when Jonnu Smith was still there, to be honest with you. And I got to see Chig, that's what he goes by, play in person against Penn State. Man, he was the best Maryland player on the field offensively that day. He was pretty good. Wasn't like super fast, caught the ball well, was somewhat elusive after he caught the ball well. He had a few moves here and there. So for him to get drafted and go to Tennessee, I like the spot, and at the 5-4, I'm completely fine with it.
It gets a little dicey around this 5th round to where, you're taking some guys who went undrafted or they have really bad draft capitals.
So you're looking at my queue. Like I said, I'm looking at Likely or Kohler, looking at Jalen Naylor with the Vikings, I'm looking at James Mitchell. I might even consider Bailey Zappi, just because I don't really know what Bill Belichick and the Patriots are doing, but he might know what he's doing, and I might just take a 5th round pick with the hope that Bill actually knows what he's doing, and maybe Bailey Zappi is the next Jimmy G. I don't really know. Not inclined to really think that. We're seeing a little bit of tight end run at the back part of the rookie draft. I think I could have predicted this because there's a lot of mid-tier tight ends, and a couple of them are going to break out into the NFL. I think a lot of them are better NFL players than fantasy players, but there's a couple of them that are worth picks in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, and we're seeing that in this draft. There's guys that are going to have opportunity in the next year or two, and it's worth taking a chance on a couple of them, hoping that you're going to hit. Even if this guy's the tight end 2 on your team and he's producing between top 12, top 24 tight end numbers, at this point in the draft, it's not a bad haul.
You have to be fucking kidding me. Charlie Kohler goes at the 5-6, and then Neil snipes me Daniel Bellinger at the 5-7. Daniel Bellinger was drafted by the New York Giants. They need a tight end for sure. And I thought he was going to be my guy. So my backup plan, we're going to go Grant Calcaterra out of SMU.
Ew, Mike, why'd you take this guy? Grant Calcaterra?
He looks like he's going to slot in and be the Eagles' number 2 tight end behind Dallas Goedert. I like the fit. I like the player. He's going to the right system for him to make use, out of his skill set. So I love it. I didn't like getting sniped, to be honest with you.
I'm going to go with James Mitchell. I like James Mitchell a lot. I have him as a top 5 tight end in this draft class, and behind TJ Hawkinson, I think he has a chance to get some play. I think Hawkinson will probably, miss a game or 2 this year, and I think Mitchell will get some snaps throughout the season, even when Hawkinson is healthy. So James Mitchell, good pass catching tight end. Let's see what he can do for the Lions. It's wide receivers, it's tight ends, it's a couple running backs late. It's wide receivers early. It's 2 running backs and a bunch of wide receivers early in Kenny Pickett. And then once you get later in the draft, you start grabbing some running backs. Don't reach for the running backs unless you really, really love a guy. Don't reach for running backs just because you need running backs. There is time for you to trade for running backs if you need them. Tight ends, find a couple guys you like and use those 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks on those guys. Same with running back. Grab your wide receivers earlier. And if you get the chance to pick up Walker or Breece Hall, obviously only if you have the 101, 102. But if Kenny Pickett falls to you, take a look at it in Superflex. If you need a quarterback 3, Kenny Pickett's going to be a solid quarterback 3. Otherwise, wide receivers all over the board for the first 2 rounds for me. Also, don't be scared to trade some of these picks for 2023 picks. People love what's in front of them. The 2023 class is a year away, but that class is really good, especially at running back. It's going to be 6, 7 running backs deep with talent, while this year is only 2 or 3. So they're going to have double the running backs to choose from. You're going to be able to get decent running backs in the 2nd round compared to this year where you're getting dart throws in the 2nd round at running back. If you're sitting in the early 2nd, mid-2nd, and there's not someone that you are happy with, feel free to move out of there for a 2023 2nd. Maybe you get, this year a 3rd or 4th on top of it. That way you still make a pick and get to throw a rookie into your taxi squad. In my drafts recently, I actually did that. I traded back twice, picked up 3 2023 2nd round draft picks, and still was able to grab a 3rd in this year's draft so I could make a pick. That's the way to do it, because once you get through the top 10, 11, 12, once you get out of the 1st round, it's a lot of dart throws. A lot of guys I'm not comfortable projecting. It's okay to push it off another year, especially if your team doesn't need the immediate help, if your team's in a deep rebuild. Either way, it's not a bad thing to push it off. Even those seconds, even if you're not going to wait until next year, you can always trade them. You can always trade them leading up into the season, throughout the season. You can make things happen. Those assets are only going to get more valuable from this point.
So as I mentioned in the past, there's just not a lot kicking around in fourth rounds anymore. If your draft goes as far as the fourth, fifth round, highly recommend trying to package those up. Even if you're only moving up a spot or two, at best, a lot of these fourth and fifth round picks are dart throws. If you're in an IDP league, there's a lot of chance of, actually players sliding down the board because good IDPs will slot into the second round, push some value down the board for you. But man, when you get down here, the way I look at it, it's a lot of players and that you're just going to end up with on your taxi squad that you're hoping for best case scenario, looking through rose-colored lenses, and it just never pans out. I think a lot of these guys are just kind of bench and cut fodder. I wouldn't be surprised to see some of these guys take off. It's one of those things where if he's in the right situation and he gets a chance, there's talent in this class. It's not like it's a talentless class. It's just a lot of, very not as awesome options. UDFAs now are into the mix and things like that. You won't find me utilizing a lot of my fourth and fifth round picks, especially when it comes to non-IDP rookie drafts. So that's my biggest bit of advice. Don't overdraft your running backs that are backups or in committees at best. Tyler Algiere, for example. Davis Price is another one. Try to get those guys in the third round. Draft more surefire wide receivers or options like Trey McBride or Jalen Tolbert. Let the other guys fall to the third round. If you're going to take an upside swing on a running back there, I'd much rather swing there than in the back end of the second. Well, that is it for this War Room mock draft. I do hope y'all enjoyed. Please leave a like if you did. Comment down below your thoughts on this format, what you thought of some of the picks, what you think of your rookie draft so far, what are some values, some of your favorite picks you've made, maybe some of the favorite trades you made to get out of your 2022 rookie mock draft. I do hope y'all take the time to check out the other two mock drafts we've done so far, one quarterback and a super flex mock draft to get you ready to win your drafts this offseason. But hey, with all that said, that is it for me today in this one. I will see y'all in the next one. But until then, y'all have a good one.